As a healthcare founder, you probably have a great idea helping others with their health in a digital health tech space, right? And you are wondering, how do I make money? How do I make a scalable business model? And here today with me, I have Sharon Huang from Tau Ventures. This is a Silicon Valley venture fund, and Sharon is an investor in this fund. She's going to speak about exactly building a business model for healthcare startups. Hi, Sharon. Great to have you with us. Please tell a few words about yourself, and let's get started.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me. A bit of background about myself. My background's in AI and epidemiology. Did a brief stint in pharmaceutical companies and as a software engineer before joining Tau Ventures. Now based out here in New York, while our headquarters is in Palo Alto. Good to have you. Good to see you. Good to talk.
All right. So, what are the viable business model for digital health startups?
Yeah, so at a certain stage, when you're kind of starting a startup, you want to think about how to generate revenue. And in order to do that, you need to come up with a business plan and a business model. So some of the most common business models in digital health space, the first one can be, B2C, so business to customer. And that kind of is kind of getting the end customer to pay. And within the US health system, you have a lot of ways in order to implement that. And one way could be a subscription. And so subscription model could be selling to customers on a year-to-year basis, where each year they're, for example, subscribe to your license of software that you're offering or the app that you're offering in terms of giving them, to raise an example, like health health advice or something on your app. A second way could be approaching physicians. And so we see a lot of diagnostic tools or diagnostic support tool startups. And in those startups, their business model could be kind of serving physicians and having them buy into a plan where they are on each month or each year buying into having those subscription tools available to them. So that's kind of one way and one aspect to approach things. The second way is kind of B2B. And so you're selling not just to customers, not really to customers, but to businesses, especially to pharmaceutical companies, because they're big and large, can be very slow, can be much, much slower than selling directly to customers. So you want to leverage kind of how fast you're able to convert sales to how much your contracts can be sold for. And those are kind of two defining things that you do want to balance when you think about one, what is who your product is for, and two, um, what is like the cost of acquiring customer versus like the lifetime value of these customers.
All right. So we have subscription model through B2C. You can approach the consumers directly, or you can approach consumers through physicians, or there is a B2B business model that you can already work with businesses on different aspects as a B2B organization. Now, what if I'm a data company and not a consumer-driven or people-facing company?
Yeah, absolutely. Arguably, data is one of the most important things in the healthcare system in the US and generally everywhere. At Tau, we really like anything that has a data play, that has an AI play, and startups that can leverage that in order to generate revenue. That's kind of our sweet spot. And so we like to see companies that are focused in that areas having sort of a business model where they can generate insights and sell those insights, or they could just sell data and not necessarily have to charge anything within customers using their platform, but in order to kind of even go further and get useful information, they can charge a fee for that. Because fundamentally, what makes data super powerful is not the numbers or the data entries themselves, but what information you can glean off of that. And so with these companies that are data based, that are primarily only focused on um, anything kind of adjacent to data and not really customer facing, what we call the back end of healthcare and the infrastructure of healthcare, these companies can become very, very powerful in terms of how they leverage the data that they have and the insights that they generate in order to sell to players within the healthcare systems, including payers, providers, even patients themselves, and pharmaceutical companies.
All right. So keep in mind, data might be another thing you can make money in your organization. Maybe it could become your main revenue source. So just look at this. Maybe this is how you can help a lot of people. At the same time, the information you will get from them might be a revenue source for you. All right. So what would be some future trends or business models in digital health that you see?
So one business model I haven't mentioned really is a transition from D2C to B2B2C. So earlier we talked about direct to customer or B2C or direct to customer, which is called D2C. And that has its merits where a lot of companies start out in that sense to get traction within their customer base. And the advantage of that is that the sales cycle is much smaller because consumers can pick up an app really quickly and that can grow or go viral very fast. But at the same time, it's very hard to maintain a fast growth within that business model. So, say you have an app and it kind of explodes in the beginning of like the year, but then start to notice that the retention rate is not very high and people start to drop off. And once the growth rate of your app, for example, is less than the retention rate, um, or is less than the attrition rate of your app, then you start to see a decline in growth of your customers, and that's never really good to see. So what ends up happening is companies pivot to from a D2C model to a B2B2C, and that really leverages businesses and all the customers that they have as a solid customer base. And so you don't have to really worry about constantly trying to acquire new customers in order to make up for people who dropped off. And there's an inflection point in which you want to make that transition. And we're starting to see a lot of startups catching on and saying D2C is a way to go to market and to gain traction and to gain kind of a name for themselves. And then the transition to B2B2C is a more stabilizing kind of strategy. And that's where a company can actually maintain its growth and even explode even further.
I have another thing to ask you that many health tech founders are asking me about FDA. So especially at pre-seed stage, they need money to grow their company, but investors are asking for traction. Without FDA, you cannot have traction. So how would you recommend to approach FDA problem for pre-seed seed startups?
In digital health, especially if it's a hardware play or anything kind of involving life sciences, therapeutics, has to go through FDA, which can be a headache, can be a long time. And I think that it's really important, first of all, to actually understand where your startup or where your product lies within the FDA guidelines and which kind of which level of FDA approval they need. And to be honest, FDA guidelines can be very elusive, can be very complicated. So, one of the things we recommend for our startups as well is to kind of get a consultant or get somebody who knows or has been through this process to kind of go through the product with you in order to understand which level of FDA approval you will need. And some startups end up sometimes without that guidance, going through things that they don't have to go through, um, and other startups kind of don't, on the other end of the line, don't realize that they need FDA approval for certain parts of their product. And so, at a high level, there are kind of key terms that you want to know and look up. So, for example, the 510K as like a device that's kind of kind of meant for devices that can be substantially equivalent to device on the market. There are also pre-market approvals, class 1, class 2, class 3, and those are indicative of how invasive these products are. Yeah, these products will need to be when they're deployed to the human body. And so knowing these high level key terms will help you kind of get into first steps of determining which FDA approval level you need. But truly understanding what you need is really key in order to kind of push your product and startup further and kind of also get in the first steps of raising money as well.
Do you recommend to approach consultants before you talk to investors, or you may you recommend to approach investors in healthcare space even before talking to consultants?
So at an idea stage or a pre-seed stage, it's very hard to kind of push for an FDA. The process is both expensive and time consuming. One of the biggest keys that is to find allies, and so that can come in terms of friends, family. It also come in terms of consultant, but that's less likely because you have to pay money to these people. One of the biggest things, though, is that if you can get an angel investor who is very experienced in this space on your side, they can possibly be a mentor in guiding you through this process, or from their network have, possible mentors, potential mentors that can help you throughout this process. So really reaching out to your network, leveraging people that might be interested in your idea and might have skin in the game in terms of how well you do and how well you succeed is definitely very key.
At Go Global World, we have plenty of founders in different spaces, including healthcare, health tech, digital health, and they are at different stages. And so instead of finding paid consultants right away, you may talk to each other and you may help out each other. The other hack that you can go also on FDA website and get all the clarification in there, because as we all know, that's very detailed. And there is one other thing I heard from some healthcare founders, that you may see the past project that already got approved, and you may see who was consulting them, and you can contact them yourself, and probably those consultants might become your consultants in a similar space. So utilize this. You don't have to pay much up, or like maybe pay at all. There are plenty of things you can do before you even have to take your money out of your pocket. All right, I have a final summary question, like out of what we discussed, what would be your final thoughts, recommendation to health care startups in digital health? Those who are at pre-seed, seed stage, that are trying to change the world and they're facing so many challenges.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always hard to start a startup, and we are really, as founders turned investors, we at Tower really kind of love helping people who are up and coming in terms of starting a startup. One of the biggest keys after developing an idea, developing a solution, iterating, and coming up with a product is really just knowing what type of people you will impact and who your product is meant for. And that's sort of a guiding force in terms of which business model would be most appropriate for your startup. And I think that comes from talking to people. So I'd encourage a lot of starting entrepreneurs to really just go out there and chat. Don't stay inside. Don't always kind of be so theoretical in terms of like thinking about the solution, thinking about other things. It's really important to be able to kind of reach out and talk to everyone and anyone who your product or who your startup would end up impacting, because that can give you a lot of insights.
All right, thank you, Sharon, so much. Appreciate for this great talk. Everyone, thank you for coming. You know where to put your comments, questions, and so please subscribe, press the like button. It really helps our channel grow, and of course recommend this video to other founders, because this video we are preparing for you, so you can apply this knowledge into real business, so you don't have to pay money to consultants for these basic questions. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you all again. And please support us and social media and become members at Go Global World. Thank you, Sharon, for coming, and have a great rest of the day, and look forward to have other talks with you.
Thanks, Daniel. Thank you so much.